All right, hello everybody, and welcome to this CompTIA A plus 1101 exam, where this time around we're going to be having a look at exam objective 2.1. So we've completely finished 1.1, 2, 3, and 4, and we're moving on to 2.1, which is exciting because we've pretty much conquered an entire exam objective by now. So that's really, really exciting, guys. You know you're making progress if you've made it through that and you're answering those questions pretty confidently. Now, let's move on to 2.1. Specifically, what are we going to be looking at today? Good question. Let's take a little look. So, this exam objective is called Compare and Contrast TCP and UDP ports, protocols, and their purposes. Now, we have a lot of different ports and protocols to go through for this one. If you have a look at this, it looks super intimidating. You're probably thinking to yourself, whoa, man, do I need to know all of this for the exam? Really? Do I need to know every single one of these? It looks like a bunch of random numbers and random words. I don't even know what they mean. Unfortunately, the answer is yes. You do need to know all of these things for your exam. That being said, it's okay, because once I give you the strategy to do that, you're going to be sweet. You're going to know how to do it. In fact, if you really absolutely 100% want a guaranteed way to conquer this, you should get my learning guide from journeytocyber.com. But moving on, guys, we're going to go through every single one. Just really subtle plug there for me. Every single one of these ports, every single one of these protocols. That was actually a lie. We're not going through every single one because there's a lot here, but I am going to give you a bunch of practice questions on these 3 to 4 practice questions with detailed explanations, and we're going to explore a lot of them. And we're also going to look at TCP versus UDP, give you a practice question on that, give you a detailed explanation, and it should be more than enough to give you a decent understanding of that topic. So with that being said, guys, let's go ahead and get started with our very first practice exam question for this topic. You are approached by a colleague who is seeking advice on managing their email accounts across different devices. They mention that they want to retrieve emails from a central server and have changes synchronized across their laptop, smartphone, and their tablet. Which of the following network ports and protocols would best suit their needs? A. Port 20 and 21, with the protocol being FTP. B. Port 25, with the protocol being SMTP. C. Port 80, with the protocol being HTTP. Or D. Port 143, with the protocol being IMAP. And the answer is D, port 143. The protocol is IMAP. So guys, when it comes to retrieving emails, you essentially, in terms of the exam, have 2 options. You have IMAP and you also have POP3. Now, they both retrieve emails, but they have some differences in how they do that. The reason we wanted IMAP in this specific scenario is because IMAP synchronizes across devices, right? So whether you access your email on your laptop, on your phone, on your smartwatch, on your iPod Nano, I don't care what it is, if you want it to be the same across all of your devices, you're going to want to use IMAP. And for the exam, specifically, that's going to be one of the key differences you need to understand about that. IMAP synchronizes across every single device, while POP3 doesn't. With POP3, if you're using that protocol, your emails might look different on your laptop than they do on your phone because you don't have it synchronized, right? So if you want it synchronized, you want IMAP. So in terms of retrieving emails, IMAP synchronizes, POP3 does not synchronize. Now let's take a look at what the other options were and go through some explanations on those. We also had Port 20 and 21, which was FTP. Put simply, guys, FTP is responsible for transferring files. If you're transferring files, you're using FTP. I'm not going to go into much more depth than that. And honestly, that's pretty much all you need to know for the exam. What is FTP? What ports does it operate on? The other option, which is particularly relevant, is SMTP on port 25. Now, SMTP, that's the protocol you use to send emails. So you've kind of got those 3 categories of email-related protocols. You've got SMTP that sends the emails, which is you can see in this graphic I have here, the email is being sent from the computer to the server. And then when it comes to receiving emails, you have POP3 and IMAP. And we just spoke about the differences between those two. So SMTP is throwing that. Now, a little trick, if you need to remember it, that I used for my exam was SMTP. When I think of TP, I think of someone TPing a house. And when you TP a house, you need to hold the roll of toilet paper and throw it. So you're not catching the toilet paper, you're throwing it over the house. In the same way, you're throwing that email at them, right? That's just something I used in my head. I don't know if that helps you or not, but yeah, there's that. And finally, we had HTTP on port 80. Now, HTTP, it's just when you're browsing the internet, and of course you have those two different internet-related ports and protocols. You've got HTTP, which is not secure. You don't want to enter credit cards or anything like that using HTTP, but you have HTTPS, which doesn't operate on port 80 like HTTP does. Instead, it operates on port 443, and that is very secure internet browsing. So if you're entering credit cards, you want HTTPS on port 443, but if you don't want secure internet, it's going to be HTTP on port 80. So that's what all those options were, all of them meant, and the ports that they operate on. With that being said, guys, next practice question. Let's do it. Your friend tells you that they would like to ensure their credit card information is secure when entering it online. What port and protocol should you recommend? A, SNMP on port 161. B, HTTPS on port 443. C, SSH on port 22. Or D, SSTP on port 414. And the answer is B, HTTPS on port 443. So guys, this is pretty much what I just explained. We just went over this, right? So it should have been quite fresh in your brain. We hopefully got that one right. If we didn't, it's okay because we're still learning, so no stress at all. It's okay to have gaps in knowledge so long as we're able and capable to come back and fill those gaps in, which is what we're going to do right now if you got that one wrong. So HTTPS does operate on port 443, and essentially, like we were saying before, I'm not going to read all the text on the slide out. You can pause and read that if you want to, but long story short, it's secure internet browsing. If you're entering credit cards over the internet, you want to make sure you're using HTTPS. You can also often identify, as you can see in the image on the slide there to the right, that you're using HTTPS not only by looking at the actual protocol there, HTTPS, but also the lock symbol will often indicate that it is secure. So that being said, let's take a look at some of those other options that we had there. We had SNMP, Simple Network Management Protocol, and that's essentially a way to configure and manage the network. That's a protocol that's used to do that. So you can do things like set what are called traps, where you say, dear network devices, if you detect this happening, send me a message. You can also, configure the network devices, things to that effect. If you are configuring network devices, the protocol you're going to be using is SNMP. If you are receiving messages about network configuration and management, you're going to be using SNMP, okay? So as simple as it can get, you use SNMP to manage the network. And another kind of brain trick I use for that one is, in Australia, we don't call it the president, we call it the prime minister. And for your local kind of representation, you have members of parliament, which is MP. And I think to myself, okay, the MPs manage the local level of government. In the same way, SNMP manages the network and the network devices, right? So it has a similar job to the members of parliament in my country. That's just something I use. Maybe it doesn't help you, maybe it does, I don't know. Let me know in the comments if that helps you out. So let's take a look at port 22, which is SSH. So SSH stands for Secure Shell. It does operate on port 22, and long story short, it's a secure method of sending terminal commands. So you're sending commands over the terminal, but it's encrypted, it's secure. This is unlike Telnet, which operates on port 23, which is basically the same thing, but it is not encrypted. So anyone can listen in on that conversation. which is obviously very, very dangerous. So port 22 SSH is secure terminal commands, and port 23, which is telnet, is insecure terminal commands. Okay, so that's all the relevant options. The last one, ignore up the top there where it says SMTP, that shouldn't be there. But the last option was SSTP, and I made that up. That's not a real thing. Don't even worry about that. So guys, let's head to the next question and see how we go. Hopefully we're starting to get the hang of this a little bit and starting to get a feel for whether or not we're ready for the exam. Hopefully we're doing well. But like I always say, guys, if we're not, that's okay, because now you know where your weak points are and you know where to focus your study on. So no worries, you got this. Let's do the next one. A colleague seeks your guidance on setting up a file sharing system for their Windows-based network. They want to share files and printers among computers, and they mention that they want to use a proprietary protocol for this purpose. Which of the following options correctly matches the protocol used for sharing files among Windows machines with its associated port number? A, SMB on port 445, B, SSH on port 22, C, SNB on port 448, or D, FTP on port 3689. And the answer is A, SMB on port 445. So essentially, guys, SMB stands for Server Message Block, and it's a kind of like just a file sharing protocol that is used particularly on Windows networks, right, among Windows devices. So if you're ever asked about a file sharing protocol that's proprietary to Windows, that's mostly used by Windows, we're looking at SMB, Server Message Block. Okay, you're sharing files among Windows devices, SMB. And I don't have a cool brain trick for that one, unfortunately. I wish I did. Just going to have to remember that one. Okay, we're going to go ahead and look at some of the other options there. No, we're not. We're going to jump straight into the next question. I think we're not looking at the other options because I've already explained these. We looked at SSH, we looked at FTP, and SNB is completely made up. That's not real. Okay, so next question. Let's do it. Which of the following is a key difference between TCP, Transmission Control Protocol, and UDP, User Datagram Protocol? A, TCP is connection-oriented, while UDP is connectionless. B, TCP is faster than UDP in most situations. C, UDP guarantees reliable delivery of data, while TCP does not. Or D, TCP is primarily used for real-time multimedia streaming, while UDP is for web browsing. And the answer is A, TCP is connection-oriented, while UDP is connectionless. So guys, long story short, TCP, it's what you use when you want to make sure the other person received your data. So an image I learned about when I was studying this was if you have one person here, and there's like a brick wall in the middle, and they're trying to throw something to each other, like passing notes to each other. With TCP, the sender will throw that over, and then they'll ask that person, hey, did you receive my note? And this person might say, yeah, I did, or no, I didn't. They're confirming. And if they didn't, they'll throw that note again until they receive confirmation. TCP performs like a handshake, right? They say, hey, look, I want to connect with you. Do you want to connect with me? They get that approval from the other device. Yes, I want to connect with you 100%. Let's have a conversation and let's make sure we properly understand each other. And then they go from there. UDP is more like look, I'm a high school teacher by trade, and often it reminds me of some students that I've had in the past where they just kind of talk at you a lot. They don't care if you're interested in what they're saying. They don't care if you are receptive. They just yap and yap and yap and yap, and it just starts sending stuff. They don't care if you're listening. They don't care if you're understanding. They just send you stuff. Think about, you're on a road trip in a car, UDP will just be talking about their life all the time, and you just want them to please stop talking, but they don't care. You're not listening. You haven't received the message. They're not fussed. They just want to tell you about their day. They just want to shout as loudly as they can. So you might be asking, why would you ever want to use an insecure protocol like UDP? Why wouldn't you always use TCP? Because sometimes that is actually a good thing, to not always be spending time and resources confirming whether or not the other device has received the data. Sometimes it's better to just shout that stuff and just throw it as much as you can and just brute force it to make sure that they get something and they get as much as they can. So for example, if you are doing credit card information, obviously you're going to want that to be very secure. So that's going to be TCP, right? However, if you're streaming Netflix or doing video conferencing, if you're always stopping to confirm and you're always making sure every single piece of data was received, the video is going to have to buffer every 3 seconds. We've been there. We've all been watching something and the video starts buffering. It's like, bro, come on, I'm just trying to watch to see if Kim Kardashian does she break up with Kanye West or not? Who knows? Is he going crazy? Is he going insane? I don't know. I want to find out, but I can't because the video just won't play. With UDP, it'd just keep going. Yeah, we missed a couple seconds, but this is a live stream. We can't slow down. We just got to keep going, Yeah, we missed a frame or two. That's all right. I don't care if you received it or not. Let's just keep throwing it at you. So when you're doing video conferences, when you're doing anything that requires real-time interaction, any kind of streaming, that's UDP. There's no confirmation of receipt. It's just getting thrown, and there's no care as to whether or not it was received. And that's a good thing because it helps keep up the pace. It helps deliver relatively smooth content without a lot of stopping. TCP is used when you need a connection and it needs to be secure. So you're transferring files, for example. That would be TCP. So long as you understand that general concept, even if you haven't memorized what each particular protocol uses, whether it's TCP or UDP, you should be able to kind of logic your way into understanding whether which one it uses based on, does this need a connection? Is it streaming? Is it based on real time? Do we have time to slow down? Right? So even if you can't memorize what each port and protocol uses, just have that general concept in your head, and that should help you out a lot, guys. So, some questions you might be asked about exam objective 2.1 here. We've got one question you might be asked is, based on the requirements, what port should you use? So it might say, look, we're using SSH. What port should you use in order to do that? That would be port 22. Based on the requirements, what protocol should you use? So this person is trying to achieve a particular job. What protocol do they need to use in order to do that successfully? Match the protocol to the port number, of course. We know we're probably going to be asked to do that at some point in time. And you might also be asked, does the given port or protocol use UDP or TCP? So what we just talked about. So long as you can answer those questions for each port and protocol, which I know is quite a lot, then you'll be ready for this exam objective, guys. Okay? Now, if you found value in this video, I highly recommend you head to journeytocyber.com and you check out my in-depth learning guide that is broken down by exam objective. So just to really point out what I mean when I say that, if I go to this slide here, you can see it's not just exam objective 1.0, it's 1.1, and then it's also further broken down by every single dot point within that exam objective. So it's incredibly in-depth. You can make sure you can very specifically identify where your weak points are. And what do we have in each of these areas? Let's take a look. We have comprehensive notes with a lot of detail broken down into easy to understand dot points. We also have active recall questions. This is for every single dot point within every single exam objective, guys. We also have detailed both scenario-based and simple questions with detailed explanations to each of those questions. And then for key points of interest where I think it's really needed, we also have learning activities, right, to really guide you through the process. So if you just want to worry about studying and you don't want to worry about, oh, what resource should I use? Should I go over here? Should I go over here? Should I go over there? I got you covered, man. Grab my learning guide from journeytocyber.com and I got you sorted. So head over there and it'll look like that. Hit that download button. You'll be sweet. Further, if you think you're ready to start taking practice exams with performance-based questions and detailed explanations, I got those for you as well. I got 5 of them for $30, right? That is incredible value. That's 30 Australian dollars. So like, you know, I think that's the best value out there as far as I'm concerned. I really, really do. And also you can grab both of those as a package for 50 Australian dollars. A complete learning guide broken down in so much detail with so many resources, with the addition of 5 practice exams. Really good value if you're trying to study for this by yourself on a budget. This is where you need to be, journeytocyber.com. All right, guys, I am done with my plug. I hope you found value in this video, and you know, if you have a friend that's trying to study for this exam, send this video to them. Tell them, you know, hey, test yourself, see how you're going. You know, are you ready to take it, or are you just going to flunk it? So anyway, yeah, I'll see you next time. Hopefully you enjoyed it. Goodbye, everybody. Yes, bye.